Hello, welcome everybody who's joining tonight. I'm Shaya Hecht, psychotherapist in Brooklyn and Queens, New York. Welcome. Tonight we're talking about survivor's guilt, which is a common struggle that many of us are struggling with. So hopefully we could provide a space here to discuss it, support each other through this difficult challenge. So I'm glad everybody's here. We'll give it another second in case anyone wants to join us. And as we're talking, if you have any questions, of course, post them in the chat. I'll talk for a couple of minutes about this issue. And then we'll also answer the questions that were pre-submitted. And if anyone has any questions, as I'm talking, feel free, of course, to let me know. Thanks for joining. So, many people are struggling with survivor's guilt, which really probably could be broken down in a couple of different ways. And not everything will speak to everyone here, but it's possible that whatever I'm going to say, something applies to you. So bear with me. So really, there's not a lot of literature, surprisingly, on survivor's guilt. But I think from the little bit that's out there, we can know that, first of all, it used to be an actual diagnosis in what's called the DSM, if you're familiar. That's a diagnostic manual. So it actually used to be a diagnosis. And in the most recent one, it was taken out. But basically, survivor's guilt typically arises in people who have been exposed to or witnessed some type of death or violence, a violent situation, traumatic situation, and they stayed alive. And it leads to emotional distress, negative thoughts about themselves, and sometimes, depending on the situation, which may not apply here, but some people actually may apply to, they might think that they're somewhat responsible for what's happened as well. So, there are really two types. So there's a type that's considered what we can call content type, where they're struggling to feel responsible for what's happened. But there's another type, which is, why did I survive? Why am I surviving? And other people are dying. And that could be a sense of guilt for people. And then there's what a lot of people are grappling with in that vein of like, how should I be right now with the fact that I survived? So hopefully we could talk about some of these things, and I hope it's helpful. So oftentimes, especially people who have been through difficult experiences in their life and they already have negative thoughts about themselves, this could be much harder, of like, why me? If there are people who have been trying to make sense of the things that have happened to them already, this could be much harder, like, why is this happening now? So this might be compounded and you might be struggling even more. And I hope everyone can know that makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense to really try to understand what's happening, why am I surviving, and what's the proper way for me to be in this type of situation. Sometimes people might the guilt might be telling them that they have to restore some sort of balance here, to sort of like maybe some sense of control, to be able to do something based on what's happened. That's a common thing. There's another thing, like we just talked about, the rumination of why, that might be going on and causing a lot of distress. So the first thing to know is that it's absolutely normal. And just allowing myself and giving myself permission to feel that guilt is something that I hope we can make space for. I know that it's something that's normal, and it's actually part of the healing and part of the coping is to just accept and recognize that this is a very normal response when there's a trauma, and especially when there's grief and there's loss. And it's very, very common for people to have a sense of guilt about survival. That's number one. The second thing that I wanted to point out was regarding the rumination and the trying to figure out the why. So obviously the treatment's going to be, or the intervention, or what we could think about is to try not to figure out the why, which is very, very difficult. But the more that we can sit with the discomfort of not having answers and not really getting it, not really understanding it, the more in control we're actually going to feel. So typically we try to have an answer to gain some sort of control, but that oftentimes makes us much, much more anxious. And instead, what we can do is to recognize the part of us that wants to figure it out, that wants to make sense of everything, and to let it know that that makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, to know that we can be okay not knowing why, and it's uncomfortable, and we could sit in that discomfort, and it's going to be okay. When it comes to complicated grief, it happens with loss, with like complicated grief as well. Like other people died, maybe I deserved more to die more than them, and these thoughts are common to occur, but we have to catch those thoughts and to be able to say that sometimes we don't get why things happen, and the world works that way for some reason, and somebody else died and I didn't, and for whatever reason that is, but I'm worthy to be here anyways, and I should treat myself that way, and I should be able to take care of myself. And sometimes that might mean enjoying things. It might mean taking care of me, even though there's a lot of pain and sadness going on at the same time. So is that really a contradiction? I think there are people grappling with that. And to me, I always like to for everyone it might mean something else, why they're feeling guilty. So it's a good idea to just slow down and check with yourself. But oftentimes what might come up is like, if there's all this stuff going on in the world and I just go on as if the world is regular, then I'm sort of like not a part of the people who are struggling, who I feel like I should be a part of. That might be something. There might be another part, like another motivation behind it, which is like, it's like I'm forgetting it. It's like I might forget it, or I might not be taking it that seriously. And I just want to address those things because that's very valid, right? It's very valid for us to think that if we just go on with life as if everything's going, then we're not taking it seriously enough. By the way, I also want to mention that there might be people who aren't feeling any of these things and feeling guilty about that. That's another common thing. But for all of these things, this part of us wants us to do better and to be better. So it's very helpful in many ways, but it also can slow us down and make us believe that we really should be suffering, really, really suffering and in a tremendous amount of pain. And that's really the right way, quote unquote, to be at this time. And I think that there's a way to be connected to pain and trauma and the people who are struggling, to be really connected to them without us getting really overwhelmed and suffering along with them. Because if we're overwhelmed and suffering along with them, then that's going to really actually affect our ability to be connected. When we're suffering and overwhelmed, it might feel noble, but it's also a isolation from the other people around us. So if we wanted to connect to them, we need to make sure that we're taking care of us, and then we can do things for them, so to speak, like having compassion for them, like maybe doing actions that are things that we feel is some sort of help to them, whether it's what people are doing now, beautiful things, sending things there and going there and helping them, or praying for them, or whatever those things are, we're only going to be able to do if we're taking care of us, taking care of ourselves, and we're balanced and healthy and in the right space. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with a person taking care of themselves at this time. And it's not only not wrong, it's actually, I think, the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And all the people who are suffering at this time actually want us to do that. So, if we would think about, if, God forbid, we were the ones suffering, would we want everyone else to suffer along with us? I don't think we would. I think we would want the other people to remember us, to think about us, to try to help us, but we certainly wouldn't want them to be suffering and be overwhelmed. So I think, just to review, we want to be able to slow down, to identify that maybe because of my past, I'm struggling with my own identity and I have already negative thoughts about myself, and that's where this guilt is coming from, and we could do some healing there. And in general, just to see why I want to feel guilty, why does this part of me want me to feel guilty? And to let this part know that, hey, I could be totally connected to this event without being overwhelmed, and I could be much more helpful if I am taking care of me. I just want to answer a couple of questions that came in. Hopefully that was clear. So I think I did answer it. I just want to make sure I did. So the question was, is it okay to eat out and have fun with a friend, listen to music? It feels so wrong. And how long should we be mourning? So like we're saying here, I think it's very, very important to be able to live your life in a full way, even while this is going on. The part that wants it, that is telling you maybe not to eat out or is concerned about eating out, we want to really try to figure out like why it wants us to do that. And a question that might be helpful to ask yourself is like, what would happen to me if I did eat out? Like, what is so bad about that? Like, to try to really explore that deep inside. It's like, what is so bad about that? And it might be that I'm enjoying while people are suffering, which we've discussed, right? And is that, so what's so bad if I'm enjoying something while someone else is suffering? Does that make me a bad person? Is that something, would they want me to suffer along with them, right? Or is it about like, I'm forgetting about what's going on? And of course, we can keep them in our consciousness even when we're eating out, right? But that doesn't mean that we have to necessarily suffer. And a similar question that came in is how to feel okay enjoying life now when those in Israel are suffering greatly. And the answer, of course, again, is that we have to be able to take care of ourselves in order to connect to those who are suffering. If we're suffering along with them, then that really is about our own suffering also. And now we're suffering and we're not able to take care of ourselves. We're not able to help them. We're not able to have compassion. We're not able to do the things that we need to do to even help them. So we're not more connected when we're more overwhelmed and more suffering. We're probably much less connected. So I hope that explains the topic, answered the questions. Hope it was helpful. If anyone has any questions, I'll just stay on for a second here. Just review if anyone sent a question. Oh, there's someone who doesn't believe in therapy. Okay, cool. And they're telling you to get a dog. So if anyone wants to listen to that, go for it. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to send them now. Otherwise, I'm so glad we were able to do this. And until next time, we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.